Hey, what's up? So thank you guys for watching my Everything Wrong with CinemaSins Hunger Games videos. They were a lot of fun to make. But I'll be honest, I don't want to be done with this series. I still have more that I want to talk about. See, 2 years ago, I watched the 4 movies for the first time and even made a video about it. I enjoyed them for the most part, but then I was let down by the ending. Then I rewatched them before Battle of Songbirds and Snakes came out, and I found myself warming up to the ending and sort of respecting it, even if I still didn't love it. Then I was asked to do Everything Wrong with videos on these movies, and Michael J. already did them, so I at first refused. But then I realized I actively wanted to do these movies. And not only that, doing these videos would give me the opportunity to finally read the book, since they could help me write the scripts. So I bought the audiobooks, listened to them, and wow. I already loved this story, but the books gave me a new appreciation for it and a deeper understanding of Suzanne Collins' intentions. I ended up getting so into it that I desperately wanted to explain my new thoughts on these movies, because that old video from 2 years ago is a little dated now. Making these Everything Wrong with videos was not enough. I needed to amend my mistake and properly review this franchise. So that's what I'm doing right now. I hope you guys enjoy it. So the first thing I have to say is that these audiobooks were really good. They were narrated by Tatiana Maslany, who, if you didn't know, also played She-Hulk. No, I'm not joking. She did a great job voicing Katniss, her inner monologue, and all the other characters. Heck, these came out after the movies, and I honestly feel like when she does Effie's voice, she sounds exactly like Elizabeth Banks. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's really cool nonetheless. Secondly, listening to these audiobooks, I felt like I was getting the same story I got from the movies, but expanded. I fully understood what Katniss' motivation was in every scene, and it made me respect the movies all the more. They were extremely faithful to the books, being able to include most of the story and condense it into a shorter runtime. All the changes the movies made didn't necessarily make the story better, they just made sense for the movies to fit into a shorter runtime. And most of what they cut, I'm totally fine with. Although I do think it would have been nice to include the scene towards the end of the first book where Katniss reveals to Peeta that she was faking their romance, but I'm not too upset about it.
It was nice acting.
You too.
Almost thought that kiss was real.
I'm overall happy with how the movies turned out. The books are better, yes, and even clarified some things for me, but the movies do an excellent job capturing the core story and adapting it to the big screen. So that's my thoughts on the book and the adapting process. Now let's discuss the actual story itself that both try to tell. One thing I neglected to mention in that first video was to truly explain what makes this story so special. Why does The Hunger Games have a massive fan base that still loves these characters? What is the main message that Collins wanted to send? I could go really deep into it, but instead, I'll recommend you watch Morgan Ross's video on what makes these books so special. He does an excellent job analyzing Collins' intentions with the subtext. But to briefly go through some of the more noteworthy things, The Hunger Games is a commentary on humanity's tendency to glorify violence. It's a callback to the old days when Rome got entertainment out of gladiators dying horrifically and in a glorious battle. But not only that, in the 21st century, we as a society are a little desensitized to violence in general, to the point where we make movies, TV shows, and video games with super violent scenes, and we get really excited about it. Granted, we're aware that it's not real, but still, the world building is also insanely creative. An oppressive government took down a rebellion years ago, and so created this arena to reap 24 children from Panem and force them to fight each other to the death, leaving only one left. It's exaggerated, and maybe doesn't make a ton of sense, but it works. And it also creates a contrast between the rich and fat capital and the hungry and starving districts of Panem. It's horrible and unfair. No wonder a second rebellion eventually happens. I don't think I fully understood why I loved this so much until I watched Andor. That was a TV show where we fully saw the evil of the Empire, and we understood why everyone hates them and can fully get behind why a rebellion happens. It's satisfying seeing the small people take back their freedom from the oppressive government. And all it takes is one moment, one person to change everything. That conveniently leads to my next point being the actual story. Now, before I watched the movies, I watched the trailers, and believe it or not, the first thing that stood out about that first movie's trailer was this scene.
Primrose Everdeen. Prim! I volunteer as tribute!
It's such a powerful scene. Obviously because they're sisters and they care about each other, but this is the first true rebellious act in the story. Katniss told the Capitol, "No, you will not take my sister and send her into a death trap where she will surely die. I would rather die myself than allow her to." And yes, Katniss Everdeen is a fascinating protagonist. She's a female character that actually has flaws and makes mistakes. She's only a teenager and she's written like one. The books go into more detail about her life and what led her to where she is now, but the movies do a decent job too, making me care. I know I cared the first time through. Despite Jennifer Lawrence's face being stoic and monotone throughout most of the series, I still totally believe that she genuinely cares about her mother, about Prim, about Gale, Peeta, Cinna, Rue, and many more. And to quote Morgan's video, she's a hero without trying to be. Her romance with Peeta is unlike any other romance I have seen. She at first doesn't care and refuses to care since she could potentially kill him in the games, but at the same time, Peeta was also there to help her at her most desperate hour, being when he threw bread out to help her feed her family. Then Peeta confesses his love for her, and after Katniss gets a little upset about this, she then decides to go along with it if it'll save her life in the games. She's pretending while Peeta is being fully serious. Then jump to Catching Fire, and after President Snow forces them to convince him that their romance was in fact real and not an act of defiance, the romance itself actually does become real. We see Katniss having nightmares from her PTSD of being in the games, and Peeta is there to comfort her and help her sleep better. She tries to be cold on the outside and not get too attached, while Peeta is kind and optimistic. He helps bring the best out of her to the point where she spends the entire quarter quell wanting to save him, and then is devastated when she sees what the Capitol has been doing with him.
You son of a bitch! You son of a... You promised me that you would save him over me!
Then you have the whole thing where Snow messes with Peeta's head, forcing him to want to kill Katniss, and she almost reverts back to that cold self that she was before she opened herself up to him. But thankfully, Peeta is able to get back to his normal self, and I think after losing so many people in the war, Katniss just saw no reason to resist him any further and allows herself to fall in love. Without Prim or Gale, and her mother not being around, Peeta is the only person who truly understands who she is. Another thing I find interesting about Katniss is her entire role in Mockingjay. Yes, she wants to kill Snow the entire time, but it's based purely out of revenge. In this book, she feels the most like a teenager. The way she rebels against the rebellion by making up the mission that Coin supposedly sent her on, and that causes most of the squad to die. Katniss is inspirational, but she's no leader. I heard one person complain about this and how her mission was a complete failure. But I think that's exactly the point. She is only 17 years old and thinks she has everything under control, like a real teenager. The book even has a whole section where she attempts to commit suicide after she kills Coin, which is incredibly dark and something I genuinely didn't expect. I mean, the movie only had that brief scene where Peeta stops her, but the book says she tried to find ways to do so while her trial was going on. And yeah, since we're at this point, let's talk about that ending. Like I said earlier, I originally didn't like it. Many people hated that Finnick died, and yes, that was sad, but personally, I despised Prim's death even more. I guess that goes to show how much I cared about her as a character, but just the fact that Katniss volunteered in her place all the way back in the first movie with the intention being to keep her alive, only for her to die 4 movies later, just didn't sit right with me. And also, Coin being the main villain just felt a little too sudden for me, though I don't think I was paying attention to notice that this was set up prior. And the final scene was just a little too depressing for my liking. But now, 2 years since that first viewing, I've really come around to this ending. Yeah, I still get sad when Prim died, but this was war. I looked up what Suzanne Collins' life was like to see what could possibly have been her inspiration, and the biggest thing I found was that a lot of her family fought in some wars, so she has plenty of experience with the ramifications of war. Not everybody makes it out alive, even people who technically didn't fight. Plus, similar to me, this death broke Katniss, and is one of the main reasons she wanted to commit suicide. And that scene where Prim's cat comes home and she gets so mad about this, only to break down crying, is easily the most gut-wrenching scene in the whole series, as properly mourning her loss was something she never had the chance to do beforehand. I realized that just like her, I also had a difficult time accepting her death, and now I do. I also now realize that Coin was always evil, and it is pretty satisfying seeing her die after she killed Prim. And that ending, while depressing, since Katniss admits she still gets nightmares from her trauma, there is some optimism with her starting a family with Peeta. And again, Collins was being realistic, since coming back from a war changes you permanently. PTSD is a legitimate issue that ruins lives. It's sad, but realistic. And heck, Lord of the Rings also ended on a bittersweet note, so if it works there, then I think it works here too. And yeah, overall I think this series has risen up my list of favorite film franchises. The original Hunger Games film is still great over 10 years later. With the way they introduced this world and these characters, you genuinely feel the horrible life these people live through and the dread that the kids go through when they're in the arena. It's essentially a survival film, and it's very intense. And man, Rue's death will always get to me, even though I know it's coming. James Newton Howard proves once again he's one of the most underrated composers out there with his fantastic score. And it's fantastic throughout the whole series. Yes, the movie does use a little too much shaky cam. Sometimes I like it, but most of the time it just feels unnecessary. Nevertheless, I still like the film for what it is. Catching Fire, and I know this sounds cliche, is the Empire Strikes Back of Hunger Games, a spectacular sequel that continues the story in a natural way. Surviving the Hunger Games is not entirely a happy ending, since seeing all those kids dying, even having to kill some yourself, is something Katniss cannot just forget overnight. We also see more of the awfulness of living under the Capitol as they execute people who show even a slight amount of defiance, making them all the more hateable. While yes, they do repeat the games, it doesn't feel like a retread because it feels bigger. Katniss and Peeta having to go up against victors who have won these games before instantly raises the stakes, and this time, Katniss genuinely doesn't want Peeta to die, unlike last time where it was an act. I also love the way they set up the rebellion and tell us that this horrible reality will come to an end soon. It ranks as my favorite in the series for these reasons. Mockingjay Part 1 for me is the weakest film. Like I said in the Everything Wrong With video, I don't believe Mockingjay needed to be 2 movies. At least with Deathly Hallows or Dune, those books are packed with a lot of story, so it makes sense that you need extra time to develop it. Mockingjay is about the same length as the first 2 books, so this just feels forced. But just looking at Part 1, it's just a 2-hour-long setup with no real payoff, and the ending felt really underwhelming. You know, because it wasn't meant to be an ending. Regardless, I still like this movie for what it is. I love seeing Katniss having to record the propos. I love listening to her singing The Hanging Tree, a song I listen to pretty frequently during my free time. I love the additional scenes of Hannah rising against the Capitol, making the story feel so much bigger. And I love the twist that Peeta was hijacked by Snow to kill Katniss. And finally, Mockingjay Part 2 is a pretty solid finale. It's much more action-packed than Part 1, with the really creative way they have another Hunger Games with the pods that could potentially kill any of them. It's really interesting seeing Katniss having the leadership role forced upon her, and then allowing a huge chunk of her team to die, as she's never led before. The story with Peeta is much more intense, as you wonder if he can really come back to that same boy that Katniss fell in love with. And I already talked about the ending at length, but again, at first I wasn't a big fan of it, but I've learned to accept it, and see this as a satisfying conclusion to a great series. I was so emotionally moved that I even decided that this was my second favorite movie in the series. So yeah, my official ranking goes Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 2, The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1. But rest assured, they're all good movies, and even with some flaws here and there, It's a story I will certainly come back to many more times. I've already added it to my list of films that I will continuously watch once a year for the rest of my life. Oh, and what about Battle of Songbirds and Snakes? I'm sure you're wondering. Well, I haven't read the book yet, and I've only seen the movie one time back when it first came out, but I remember really liking it and finding it to be a pretty decent prequel for Snow's character, though I'll probably do a separate video going into more detail. And with all that said, I'll see you next time. He does an excellent job analyzing Collins's... Oh my gosh! That's gonna be a tongue twister. He does an excellent job analyzing Collins's intention. Oh boy. He does an excellent job analyzing Collins's. He does an excellent job analyzing Collins's. Come on. Then you have the whole. Here's Sirens. And that ending, while depressing, since Katniss admits she still gets. And that ending, while depressing, since Katniss admits she still gets nightmares. Okay. Don't know how I flunked that up. And that ending, while depressing, since Katniss admits why is the sentence difficult? And that ending, while depressing, since Katniss admits she still gets I don't know why that's this sentence. I can't talk. Dadgummit.